New Mexico's senior senator is calling for a New Mexico-based immigration and custom enforcement detention facility to be closed after his congressional staff observed troubling conditions during a visit in late May. The Albuquerque City Council is set to consider sweeping new rules that would overhaul the rental process citywide, aiming to protect tenants from hidden fees, housing instability, and unresponsive landlords. Families hoping to send money to loved ones who are in other countries may be hit with additional fees from a tax and spending bill proposed by the Trump administration. And a landmark legal ruling is set to transform college sports, and New Mexico's major universities are embracing the change. From the Albuquerque Journal, this is the leading news. I'm Gino Gutierrez. It's Tuesday, June 10th, and I'll have more on those stories in a few moments, plus a look at Albuquerque's weather forecast on the other side of this break.
This episode is brought to you by the Kirtland Partnership Committee. For 30 years, we've been dedicated to supporting, growing, and preserving the Kirtland National Security Complex. We work tirelessly to enhance military readiness, foster community partnerships, improve quality of life, and promote economic development right here in New Mexico. Join us in our mission to ensure that Kirtland remains a cornerstone of national security and a key provider of quality jobs and investment for all of Greater Albuquerque. Together, we can make a powerful impact. Kirtland Partnership Committee, proudly shaping the future of our national security for 30 years.
New Mexico Senator Martin Heinrich is calling for the closure of the Torrance County Detention Facility, citing years of inadequate legal and medical access, inhumane conditions, and reports of physical abuse. With more on this, we now turn to the Journal's federal government reporter, Kathy Cook. Kathy, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Gino.
So Kathy, obviously the senator with a list of grievances that he penned in this letter. What more can you tell us about this development?
So Senator Heinrich, this is not the first time that he's called for the Torrance County Detention Facility to stop housing ICE detainees. You know, he sent a letter in December 2023 under the Biden administration, again asking for CoreCivic, the private company that owns and runs this facility, to get their ICE contract terminated. CoreCivic, of course, has responded to the letter, but they've told us we do have adequate medical care. We're committed to providing safe, humane, and appropriate care for the people in our facilities. They dispute, some of his claims. This most recent letter originated when some of Heinrich's congressional staffers visited the detention facility in late May, and some of the things they observed there, gave them concern.
And Kathy, probably one of the more striking parts of your story is that you mentioned the Torrance County Detention Facility actually experienced a 3-day water outage with limited contingency planning as well, and that had a serious effect on the detainees.
Estancia in April notified a number of entities that they were having some water shortage issues. CoreCivic says that, when it was notified of this, it tried to reduce its water consumption, and they say, drinking and bottled water were always available, and that the detainees were provided water to help flush toilets as an added measure to reduce water consumption. Heinrich's staff were told by detainees that water was only turned on for 1 hour every 3 days for showers, and that they were provided only 2 bottles of drinking water per day, and that they were unable to flush toilets for days at a time. So there's a little difference. There's some difference in how the detainees are sort of characterizing this period of water shortage in the detention facility, and how CoreCivic, the company that runs the detention facility, is characterizing it. Part of why Heinrich is concerned is also because his staffers, questioned the detention facility's warden about, what its plans are, its contingency plan for if there's another water shortage, and they said the only plan that he was able to describe was the total relocation of all the detainees, so they found that troubling. And they also said that, he mentioned there were 2 backup water tanks. He was unable to answer questions about the capacity of those tanks, and so that gave them cause for concern as well.
So Senator Martin Heinrich penning a letter calling for the closure of ICE detainment at the Torrance County Detention Facility, and we'll keep our eyes up to see what developments come from this. Albuquerque Journal federal government reporter Kathy Cook sharing the latest with us. Thank you so much, Kathy.
Thank you, Gino.
The Albuquerque City Council is reviewing the rent ordinance, a sweeping proposal aimed at increasing transparency and tenant rights across nearly all aspects of renting in Albuquerque. With more on what this means, we now turn to the Journal's local government reporter, Justin Garcia. Justin, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
So Justin, what can you tell us about this ordinance and what exactly it would do for renters in the city?
Yeah, so the bill, which is actually known as the Renters Empowerment and Neighborhood Transparency, an acronym that spells out RENT, would enshrine several protections around almost every part of the renting process. It It touches on when you first apply for a rental property, to when repairs are needed, to, like I said, every single part of the process. And it's still quite a ways away from being heard at a full council. It's set to go to a committee this week, but it's garnered a lot of attention and it's in its early stages.
And Justin, there's also some major provisions in this bill as well. What can you tell us about those?
Yeah, that's right. So one of the biggest changes that this bill would implement is a series of transparency protections. So if anyone's ever rented in really anywhere, they've probably had the experience of realizing that what they pay per month is probably not necessarily what was advertised when they first saw it online or wherever. Oftentimes fees and other things get kind of tacked on to the final monthly rent. And this bill would make it so all of that kind of stuff has to be shown to the tenant or potential tenant right up front.
And Justin, the timing of this ordinance is really interesting because it comes at a time where we've been hearing a lot about a housing crisis here in Albuquerque, not enough units here in the city for people to live in. So how does this ordinance plan to approach that issue?
Yeah, it's one of the things that when I was talking to the city's policy and government affairs administrator, Shauna Schultz, it's one of the things that she brought up that it really kind of fits into the city's wider attempt at addressing the housing crisis. And so, she told us that this was another tool in the toolkit for addressing that. And specifically, her argument was that this protects people who are already in housing situations and makes less likely their ability to fall out of housing and become homeless.
And Justin, what can you tell us as far as the support this bill is receiving as well as the opposition?
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting couple of weeks with this one. There's definitely some support on the council for this. Councilor Tammy Feeblecorn, who's sponsoring the bill on behalf of the administration, said, she threw her full support behind the bill and was optimistic about its potential. But we've seen in the past the council reject other renter protections, and we've also seen them pass renter protections, including recently a bill that required landlords to provide cooling to tenants, and a bill that created a codes enforcement position specifically to respond to issues that renters have with their landlords.
Justin, and as far as the path forward for this legislation goes, what can you tell us about that?
So on Wednesday, it will be heard before the Land Use Planning and Zoning Committee. And if it makes it out of that, it's probably not going to be heard until August because the council will have a bit of a break in July. So might be hearing about this one for a couple of weeks, maybe all summer.
So an interesting piece of legislation on its way to the Albuquerque City Council to be debated, and it could have implications for citizens across the city. Albuquerque Journal local government reporter Justin Garcia sharing the latest with us. Thank you so much, Justin.
Thanks for having me.
The Trump-backed One Big Beautiful Bill Act proposes a 3.5% tax on readmittances sent by non-U.S. citizens, including green card holders, temporary workers, and documented immigrants, to families and friends abroad. After passing the House in May, the bill is now under Senate debate. Originally set at 5%, the tax was reduced to 3.5% amid criticism. Readmittances, often used by immigrant workers to support families in developing countries, are a key source of income in places like Mexico, El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras, sometimes making up 20 to 30% of their GDP. In 2024 alone, Latin America received $160.9 billion, with Mexico receiving over 96% of its readmittance income from the United States.
Remittances attribute to a source of income for a country's gross domestic product. Places like India and Mexico are the most concerning. India and Mexico are the number 1 and number 2 for receivers of remittances.
My colleague Nikayla McClellan is a reporter at the Journal.
And a lot of places have built an economy out of this. The US dollar is stronger in other countries, and so that means a lot for the economy there. So it would be pretty difficult for people.
Supporters of the bill, particularly among Republican lawmakers, say the tax will help fund public services, border security, and community infrastructure, easing the burden on U.S. taxpayers. They describe the measure as, quote, pro-worker and pro-family. However, critics warn of severe consequences. Mexican officials, including Ambassador Esteban Montezuma, argue the tax would disproportionately hurt low-income families, especially since most migrant workers already pay U.S. taxes, making this a form of double taxation. They also worry it would push readmittances into less transparent alternatives like cryptocurrency or informal channels. With the average readmittance to Mexico at $350 every month or two, advocates stress that while the amount may seem small in the United States, it's crucial for covering basic needs in the recipient countries. The debate now hinges on whether this tax is a fair funding mechanism or an unjust financial burden on immigrant communities. In other headlines from the newsroom, a landmark legal ruling is set to transform college sports, and New Mexico's major universities are embracing the change. A federal judge approved the House settlement, which was a $2.8 billion class action resolution, allowing NCAA schools to directly pay athletes for their name, image, and likeness, or NIL, and to back pay athletes dating back to 2016. The University of New Mexico and New Mexico State Universities both say they're ready, with both athletic departments expressing optimism despite tight budgets. UNM Athletic Director Fernando Lobo says revenue sharing is essential to remain competitive, especially by leveraging Lobo basketball and elevating football. NMSU Acting Athletic Director Amber Burge echoed a similar commitment to sustainability. Though neither school can come close to the $20.5 million revenue sharing cap seen at the Powerhouse programs, both are strategizing how to redistribute existing funds. Key sports like football and men's basketball will likely benefit first, raising concerns about potential cuts to smaller and non-revenue sports, though both schools deny any immediate plans to reduce scholarships. Additionally, NIL payments over $600 must now be disclosed to a new oversight body, the College Sports Commission. NKOAT Action 7 News has named longtime meteorologist Byron Morton as its new chief meteorologist, succeeding Joe Diaz, who retired in May after 38 years at the station. Morton, who joined KOAT in 2001 as a weekend meteorologist, brings with him a deep passion for weather that began during his days as a tornado chaser in Oklahoma. A graduate of the University of Oklahoma and a certified broadcast meteorologist, Morton will now lead KOAT's afternoon and evening weather coverage. He also plans to expand KOAT's digital weather presence, aiming to make it a more reliable and accessible source across mobile and online platforms. The leading news is powered by the journalism of the Albuquerque Journal. If you enjoy hearing all of the stories we share with you here daily, please consider becoming a digital subscriber to the Journal by utilizing the discount code in our show notes. Every subscription supports local journalism and allows us to provide the stories that matter to you. Now taking a look at Albuquerque's weather forecast, there is a 40% chance of showers and thunderstorms mainly after 3 p.m., partly sunny with a high near 87. As for this evening, you can expect a 20% chance of showers and thunderstorms before midnight, partly cloudy with a low around 60. To keep up with all the latest news from the Albuquerque Journal, you can visit our website at abqjournal.com. That's the leading news. I'm Gino Gutierrez. We'll be back tomorrow.